Hello friends, this is Worm and it's Monday, which means it's time for another episode of Exotic Recrafting, the series where we take a look at weak, underused, or straight up bad exotics in Destiny 2, talk about how we can give them a facelift and make them better, and we're talking about Blight Ranger today, and I'm gonna just come right out and say it. Blight Ranger has got to be the worst, like the absolute worst exotic in the game. Like out of all the classes, out of all, characters, thinking of all the exotic armor piece, of course, in the game, Blight Ranger has got to be like the worst. Not like top 3 worst, like no, it is absolutely the worst. I have never seen somebody use it in any level of content, no in-game content, no messing around content. I've never even seen it in patrols or anything like that. Like I have never really used it. Like I remember I used it way back in the day when I got it, and I was like, I wasn't super impressed with it, but I put it down, blah, blah, blah. But of course, being a diligent Destiny 2 player, I decided I'd pull it out and we'd give it a test run because, I know that it's not that good. We'd give it a test run to see what it's all about. And it's just not good. It is an absolute terrible super. So let's talk about what it does first. Its exotic perk here is Voltaic Mirror. Attacks you direct with your arc staff deal massively increased damage, and generate orbs of power for your allies. Guarding with your arc staff does not consume extra super energy. Let's break that down. So of course, when you're blocking, doesn't consume any extra energy. When you're reflecting projectiles, it reflects them at 400% increased damage, that's a sizable amount of damage. I wouldn't say that's massively, like it said in the description, like that's a pretty decent chunk. But whenever we take a look at some of the damage numbers here, like it's really not that much. And then of course, when you're reflecting damage, it makes orbs of power, and these orbs are pretty beefy. They give you like 7 to 8% of your super. Give your teammates 7 to 8% of their super, but that's all it does. Okay, so it is a super based exotic. It revolves around the use of your super and stuff, and it's just really weak because when you're using Blight Ranger, it wants you to play in a way that is kind of counterintuitive to Blight Ranger. Blight Ranger, of course, Arc Staff. Let me correct that. Arc Staff, of course, is a super that wants you to roam around the battlefield. It wants you to, combo your attacks appropriately, 2 light attacks and a heavy. It wants you to use your dodge ability. Like it really wants you to be mobile, take care of high health targets, target enemies specifically, and Blight Ranger completely changes the role of Arc Staff. Okay, it makes it makes you want to be a standstill, kind of a bulwark, I guess, kind of like a Sentinel Titan almost, if you would. And that's just really kind of the core problem of the exotic. It doesn't really work with how they, Arc Staff works. So first, let's talk about what it actually does, because the stuff that it actually does is just terrible. And I think the first, buffs that we need to talk about to Blight Ranger are just buffs to the things it already has going for it. So without actually changing anything about the exotic perk, the increased damage, 400%, is not a lot of damage. I mean, I think in the gameplay you're watching here, whenever we're at the boss is shooting me and it's reflecting the boss's attacks back at the boss and is dealing like 2,000 damage. Like I deal more damage with like a sidearm. And of course the boss's attack is very slow. Like I guess on a higher, like an ogre or something that spams attacks, it could be potentially better, but really it's not that much damage. And so the first thing that I think needs to happen is they need to crank up that damage increase to probably like 1,000%. And I know that sounds crazy, and it's very rare that Bungie actually, gives us a massive damage boost, but think of something like Peregrine Greaves for Titan against champions. Those deal like 1,000% more damage to champions. Like they literally can one-shot champions in Grandmaster content, which is incredible. Blight Ranger should do that same thing. Again, if we're going to build into the blocking and reflecting damage back, that needs to happen. Now, I think that also one of the things it says here that it doesn't drain super energy, it doesn't consume extra super energy. I would almost argue that whenever you're blocking attacks that are, shot at you, it should be slowing down your super. It gives you a longer super duration. That way you can actually properly block, however much damage. And don't get me wrong, it is a long time. Like in some of these, like I'll activate that dodge as soon as it starts, and it lasts for the full like 30 seconds or 20 seconds, however long the super lasts, which is a long time. But again, I think that it could be better by slowing down the super drain whenever you're using that block attack. So those are the changes that I would make to the like very most basic level of the exotic. Like it's very underwhelming in terms of its damage. So let's crank that up. But let's talk about some other changes that we could do to Blight Ranger to make it better. Starting off with Bungie's favorite thing, not my favorite thing, Bungie's favorite thing. Let's add some surge mods to it, because surge mods, we've seen this happen to a dozen other super based exotics, you know, and adding surge mod I think is probably unfortunately the way that Bungie is going to go. But of course, adding surge mods whenever you block damage, you know, if you're blocking damage with Blight Ranger, you know, it's giving you additional like surge timers. So depending on the damage that you block while your super is active, when the super actually ends, you get a ×4 stacking surge buff, or maybe even go crazy, Bungie, give us a ×5 or ×6 surge and to arc weapons, or I would say to all weapons, honestly, but give us that surge to our weapons. And then of course, depending on how much damage we block, it also increases that timer as well, up to a maximum of like 30 seconds. So you can have a 30-second surge mod timer going at ×5 or ×6 stacks. Like you're dealing a ton of damage after your super runs out, plus of course all the damage that your super did when you're reflecting back. I think that that's probably some way that Bungie's going to go. They're going to implement surge mods. This is not my favorite way, because this is a really boring way to change the exotic. It really doesn't make me want to use it anymore. You know, things like Eternal Warrior, I don't want to use Eternal Warrior any more than I ever have, because it's just not that good. Like anything that gives surge mods, that's a really boring and really almost lazy way of changing exotic. So I think that's what we're going to go with, but I think that's what Bungie's going to go with. But I would like to see something different. Now, in terms of other things that Bungie could do, I actually love the idea of having Blight Ranger also work with some sort of grenade or melee based attack. And what I mean by this is or even a class ability, right? So perhaps when you're sliding with Blight Ranger, you get that Antaeus Ward's Juggernaut shield right in front of you. Like how cool would that be? That way you could slide in, you activate Tempest Strike, you know, you get it off, it jolts enemies, it kills enemies, stuff like that, but you also get that shield that can reflect damage back. I think also you could do the same thing for Ascension. Like when you activate Ascension, it gives you like basically a protective like cocoon around you that reflects any and all damage that comes back at you. I think that would be a really neat way to change up the exotic, to potentially just make it see a little bit more use and a little bit more utility outside of just your super. But I think also if we're gonna go really like into that way, like I think that's you know, we could really do like a full rework for the exotic, right, and implement, you know, the Tempest Strike, the Ascension into the Blight Ranger's kit. And basically the idea that I have is, you know, Ascension is kind of like you turn into like a little tornado and go up in the air. Like imagine if when you jump in the air and you activate Ascension, like it literally sucks up all the damage, and then whenever you come out of Ascension, you like dive back down to the ground or something like that. You have the ability to dive back to the ground, and when you hit the ground, it creates a massive shockwave that jolts like, you know, a bunch of enemies and sends out little seekers to go shock enemies. Like something like that would be really, really cool. Again, like this would be totally changing how the exotic kind of works. Not totally changing it, keeping its current effect, but you know, adding this so that you can use it with your neutral game would be a lot of fun. I think that would be a really cool way of doing that. Now, another issue that I see with Blight Ranger is the fact that it's like whenever you're, you know, it puts you in one spot, you know, and we talked about the arc staff being something that's, you know, makes you want to move around the battlefield and stuff like that. So I would almost go as far to say with Blight Ranger, when you activate your arc staff, it instantly starts twirling. Like you don't have the ability to attack anything like that. You just twirl your arc staff. Then you also get a tremendously increased movement speed. So like, you know, like you're hauling butt around the battlefield. Like you're able to basically move at amplified level speeds while you're in your super and you're twirling this arc staff. That way you can move around the battlefield, you can reflect damage, and as you run into enemies, as you walk into enemies while you're twirling that arc staff, it will deal damage to them. So you know, the premise I have behind this is, you know, you walk into a thrall wave, where a bunch of enemies are coming at you. Activate your super, you immediately start twirling. As enemies walk into that, they're just eviscerated into an arc, like an arc nothingness, right? I think that would be so neat and so cool. And again, you're also able to move faster. So in situations like, you know, where there's a mission or you know, an encounter in a raid or something where you have to be moving quickly, you have to clear a lot of ads, you can put a hunter up in the front with Blight Ranger. They activate their super and they just go through and they cut through ads and they clear your path, and then the rest of the team can kind of, you know, follow suit and walk in there. I think that would be super cool. That'd be a really interesting way to change Blight Ranger to potentially make it better. But yeah, in terms of other changes, I can't think of any off the top of my head. I think Blight Ranger, it's one of those exotics that it's so bad that anything they do to it is gonna make it better. So really, like, this is one of the most open, like, exotics, like, that the Bungie could change to make better. I really just hope they don't do surge mods. Like, that's just so boring. I hope that they really get creative with it, because like I said, anything they do to it will make it better. But with that being said, I want to hear your thoughts on Blight Ranger and you know, the ideas I had for it. Do you like them? Do you not like them? Just tell me all that stuff in the comments. Of course, do me a favor, like the video, it helps the channel out a lot. Subscribe for more daily Destiny content, conversations, debates, discussions, all that good stuff. And yeah, do me another favor, watch the videos you see on screen, because for whatever reason, YouTube thinks you'll like them. Guys, I'll see y'all next time. Bye for now.